Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, to our brethren in Georgia, Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, and Africa, to the United Kingdom, and to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our first episode on the subject, the last three Wu trumpets. This is one of the most controversial subject among the media, and we need to study closely this very important subject. Now, I would like to read again the statement in track number 5, page 26, saying, symbolical or literal, which only when this question is rightly answered will we have the correct interpretation to unlock this great symbolical treasure house of truth. And on page 41, track number 5, for if every term is not symbolical, how shall we differentiate those which are from those which are not? And how shall we know by which to define the truth? So, in this study, the last three Wu trumpets, every term must be symbolical according to our reading. And secondly, here in track number 5, page 34, in the main, however, the trumpets and the seals, so both the 7 trumpets and the 7 seals, portray an event which is future from John's time and which takes place in heaven, although they also portray kindred events. Of these related events, some are contributory and some are consequent to the main prophetic event. The former naturally precede and the latter historically. So, the next thing that we need to observe is to completely differentiate the things that takes place in heaven and those things that takes place on earth. According to that reading, concerning the subject, both the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets, it says the fulfillment of this prophecy is still future in the days of John the Beloved, and it takes place in heaven. Although there are also kindred events, according to the reading, related events, by which some are contributory and some are consequent to the main prophetic event. So, the main prophetic event takes place in heaven, not on earth. And the admonition given is in track number 8, page 5. So, correctly to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. Concerning the part which takes place in heaven, all of them are still future in the days of John the Beloved. So let us read again in track number 5, page 34. In the main, however, the trumpets and the seals portray an event which is future from John's time and which takes place in heaven. So the things that takes place in the past cannot be the main prophetic event because the main prophetic event still future in John's time. And it is even more particularly pointing to the occurrence that takes place in heaven. Now in page 32, in track number 5, it says, the statements which must shortly come to pass, Revelation 1 verse 1, then I will show thee things which must be hereafter, Revelation 4 verse 1, go to say that the revelation is given with the one particular object in view of showing the things lying not behind but ahead of John's time.
with reference being made only incidentally to the past in order to lay the necessary foundation upon which to build the future. And those events that had been already fulfilled, according to track number 5, page 33 and 34, it says, so though all such prophecies necessarily bring to our attention things which took place centuries ago, yet they are designed like the revelation to show to God's people things which must shortly come to pass. Fulfilled prophecies are seen therefore to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. So let us distinctly separate the groundwork and the particular object in view. Or in other words, here in track number 12, pages 64 and 65, in the light of these foregone fundamental facts, we should now be able to rightly evaluate the unfolding of the scroll and to intelligently match the page of prophecy with the page of history. So let us intelligently match those pages which was already fulfilled, which is the groundwork, and those prophecies which is yet to be fulfilled, which is the particular object in view. And the next divine principle that we need to fully establish is the statement in track number 5, page 35. It says, naturally then, the first seal must precede the first trumpet, the second seal, the second trumpet, and so on. Track number 5, page 35. So, the divine principle is that the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy, it must be that the seal must precede its matching trumpet. For example, the fifth seal must precede the fifth trumpet because that is our main subject. The last three wu trumpets. Now let us establish first the commencement of the fifth seal. Now here in 2SR on page 221 and also on page 213. Now let us read 221 on 2SR. The first seal covers the entire period from Adam to the flood. The second seal from the flood to Abraham. The third seal from Abraham to Christ. The fourth seal from Christ to 1500 AD. And the fifth seal from 1500 AD to 1755. So that is very plain that the fifth seal commenced on 1500 AD. Now, how about the fifth trumpet? So, it says here in track number 5 on page 79. It says, the flood, first trumpet, the Exodus movement, second trumpet, the giving of the Old Testament scriptures, third trumpet, the church going into captivity, fourth trumpet, Christ's first advent and subsequent events, fifth trumpet. Track number 5, page 79. So, the fifth trumpet commenced on the birth of Jesus Christ in 4 BC. So, it is contrary to the proper application of the prophecy as stated by the shepherd's rod. And it so happened that the fifth trumpet precedes the fifth seal, whereas the divine principle in track number 5, page 35, it must be that the fifth seal must precede fifth trumpet. So, we can immediately conclude that it is not the particular object in view. It is not the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy, but rather it is the groundwork employed by the scriptures according to our reading in track number 5, page 34, so that we could be able to immediately discern or easily understand the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy by looking to the groundwork. Now, here's another statement that I would like to read in 2TG number 14 on page 15. It says, chapters 10 and 11 consequently sandwiched in chapters 8 and 9 to TG 14:15. We know that the word sandwich meaning between. Now that statement is very plain to TG 14:15. That Revelation 8:13 and we have Revelation 9 verse 1. It says Revelation 10 and Revelation 11 is sandwiched between Revelation 8:13 and Revelation 9 verse 1. If Revelation 9 verse 1 is pointing to the birth of Christ in 4 BC, then how could it be that Revelation chapter 10 is sandwiched? The word sandwich must be, Revelation chapter 10 must be fulfilled first before Revelation 9 verse 1. Revelation chapter 10 must be fulfilled first after Revelation 8:13. After Revelation 8:13 and before Revelation 9 verse 1. And the prominent event in Revelation chapter 10 is concerning that angel in verse 1 and verse 2. Now, let us focus our attention to Revelation chapter 10, verse 1 and verse 2. So, I would like to focus on that part. So, we have Revelation 8 verse 13 and we have Revelation 9 verse 1. Now, let us focus first to Revelation 10 verse 1 and verse 2, by which the event recorded in Revelation 10 must find its fulfillment between this bracket period, Revelation 8:13 and Revelation 9:1, because it is sandwiched according to 2TG number 14. So the only safe conclusion is that it must be pointing to the perfect fulfillment of Revelation 8:13 and the perfect fulfillment on Revelation 9 verse 1, not the groundwork. Because on the groundwork, 4 BC, Revelation 9:1, but Revelation chapter 10 still in the future. So to repeat again, we need to study closely first Revelation 8 verse 13, then concentrate on Revelation 10 on verse 1 and 2. Now let us read track number 5, page 57 and page 58. The whoosh, Revelation 8 verse 13. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels, which are yet to sound. So Revelation 8 verse 13 is a message announcing the 3 woos. The woo under the 5th trumpet, the woo under the 6th trumpet, and the woo under the 7th trumpet. So in order for human being to avoid such woo, there is a message proclaimed, recorded in Revelation 8 verse 13. Now, if we will establish our divine principle that the subject of the trumpets are symbolical prophecy, then the description on verse 13 must be symbolical. Undoubtedly, the earth mentioned there cannot be literal. So the warning message in Revelation 8 verse 13 is directed to the symbolical earth. And of course, the symbolization of the symbolical earth on chapter 8 must be the same with the symbolical earth on Revelation chapter 13. For the writer on chapter 8 is the same writer on chapter 13. The same divine principle used by B.T. Hotep and 2SR. 154 on 2SR. If Daniel means year by time and a half year by dividing of time, in the 25th verse of the same chapter, then he must mean the same in the 12th verse. If the interpretation holds good in one verse, it must be in the other. Now, to paraphrase that statement, if the symbolical earth in Revelation 13 is pointing to the United States of America, the 200 beast domain, then the symbolical earth in Revelation 8:13 must be the same, pointing to the inhabitants to the symbolical earth. And it is perfectly corroborating to the warning message in Revelation 7 verse 3, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So the particular object in view to be heard on the symbolical earth as well as on the sea. But the very first one mentioned is the earth. It must be the trees. The trees represent leadership. And it is only on the earth by which the trees naturally grow. According to track number 8, page 24, it says, it is located to John in the symbol of the two-horned beast coming up not out of the sea, but out of the earth. Revelation 13, verse 11. The only place where trees naturally grow. And as according to Daniel 4, verse 20 to 22, trees are figurative of rulers. Therefore, the trees in this instance represent the ancient men before the house. Ezekiel 9, verse 6. A fact which reveals that in this period, the church headquarters are in the two-horned beast dominion in the new world, the earth. So, the message on Revelation 8, verse 13 is even more particularly directed to the symbolical earth and more particularly to the leadership. Now let us go back again, track number 5 on page 58. It says, the last three of the 7 trumpets, being who trumpets, unlike the first 4, some great change obviously is to take place between the first 4 and the last 3. So, that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Some great change. Now, for example, this is the first 4. First 4 trumpets. So, this is the first 4. And this is the last 3. The last 3 trumpets. It says, between the first 4 and the last 3, there must be great change that will take place. According to our reading in track number 5, page 58. Now, let us now study closely. What is the great change? Let us distinctly separate the great change, which is the groundwork, and the great change, which is the particular object in view. Now, let us go back again to the reading in track number 5 on page 58. So, let us read the statement. Having up to this point brought us to the destruction of the first temple and on to the building of the second, the prophetic word of God leads us on now to the first advent of Christ and to His crucifixion, the next great events associated with the trumpets, and these events ushering the Old Testament era out and the new one in. Disclose that the last 3 trumpets embrace the history of the New Testament period. The whose consequently point first to Satan's persecuting the faithful in his endeavor to keep them from embracing Christianity, and the second whose to his persecuting the heathen in his endeavor to Christianize them. Now, let us focus to the statement, saying, having up to this point brought us to the destruction of the first temple, and on to the building of the second. Now, I would like to illustrate. From groundwork to the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy. Now, let us illustrate the reading. Now, we know that the first literal temple, the Temple of Solomon, was completely destroyed in 588 BC. Right? 588 BC. Temple of Solomon, completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. And this is the first temple. The first temple. Because that is the statement on track number 5, page 58. And then to the building of the second. The commencement of the building of the second temple, we know that it commenced in 519 BC. And within 4 short years, the foundation had been completely finished up to 514 BC. Now, brothers and sisters, if you will look at to the statement, it is not true on the literal temple. Because the statement says, let's read again, having up to this point brought us to the destruction of the first temple and on to the building of the second. So, 519 BC, the building of the second. The prophetic word of God leads us on now to the first advent of Christ and to His crucifixion, the next great events associated with the trumpets, and these events ushering the Old Testament era out and the new one in, disclose that the last three trumpets embrace the history of the New Testament period. Now, I would like to prove, brothers and sisters, that this statement is even more definitely applied in the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy and on the particular object in view. And this events is only pointing to the groundwork so that we could understand the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy. So we need to connect to the subject, the temple's type. So I would like to connect our subject to Zechariah chapter 6. Zechariah chapter 6 on verse 12. And speak unto him, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, behold the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Zechariah chapter 6, verse 12. So, it is the branch that shall build the temple of the Lord. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us here in 1 TG number 8. Let us read. On page 24, it says, who is to bring this revival and reformation? Then it says, this great change. Now remember, we already read in track number 5. Let us read again the statement on page 58. It says, the last three of the 7 trumpets being woe trumpets, unlike the first 4, some great change obviously is to take place between the first 4 and the last 3. So the great change must be between the first 4 and the last 3. Now, let us now study the great change on the groundwork and the great change in the particular object in view. Now, I would like to read again the statement in 1 TG number 8, page 24. Who is to bring this revival and reformation? This great change, the branch. And according to Isaiah 11, verse 1 to 5, the branch is the Lord, the Son of David. So, who is He, the branch? That is Jesus Christ. So, this prophecy is very important and very wonderful, and it needs to be carefully studied, brothers and sisters. Here's another great change that had been stated in the vision of the prophet. Let's read Early Writings 271. It says, I heard those clothed with the armor speak forth the truth with great power. It had effect. Many had been bound, some wives by their husbands, and some children by their parents. The honest who had been prevented from hearing the truth now eagerly laid hold upon it. All fear of their relatives was gone, and the truth alone was exalted to them. They had been hungering and thirsting for truth. It was dearer and more precious than life. I asked what had been made this great change. You see, the same statement. I asked what had made this great change. An angel answered, it is the latter rain, the refreshing from the presence of the Lord, the loud cry of the third angel. Early Writings 271. So, the voice of inspiration says that the great change is the refreshing from the Lord. That is the great change. And before the great change, it says that some husband had been bound with their wife, sons and daughters, parents, relatives. the statement says they had been prevented to listen to the message. They had been prevented to accept the message. Now, going back to Revelation 8 verse 13, the message is directed to the symbolical earth, the United States of America. What is the woe? The first woe is directed to them who persecute anybody who wish to join to the true movement. I would like to elaborate that statement because the statement to embrace Christianity on the groundwork, the only true movement on the first advent of Jesus Christ are the Christians. But the fact is that in the days of the apostles, there is only one Christian. There is only one Christian denomination, and that is the true movement. But in our days, thousands. So the statement can be easily understood that woe unto them who hinder anybody who wish to listen to the true gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the present truth. Woe to all of them who hinders anybody or persecute anybody who wish to listen to the message and to join the movement. And it is directed to the symbolical earth. Now let me read to you. 2SR, page 101. Peter saw a time when God will judge the church. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? 1 Peter 4, verse 17. What would be the end of him who enters not the ark of safety, but dares bar the way of others? As the prophet saw the day of vengeance upon the sinner in Zion, and the Lord returning from the slaughter, he asked. Isaiah 63, verse 1, verse 4 to 6. And to repeat again, Isaiah 63, let us read again the statement in answerer number 4, pages 22 and 23. It is concerning Isaiah 63, verse 3. The first part of the verse applies to the first advent of Christ, and the last part to the time of the purification of the church. So one subject dovetailing another. Track number 5, page 36. And one thing proves another. 2SR 255. So the voice of inspiration says that the prophecy recorded in Isaiah 63, the focal point is the time of the purification of the church. And this is the divine warning given. It says that whoever continues to hold his people in bondage, that vision of Sister White in early writings 271, to accept the truth. Some by their wives, some by their husbands, some by their parents, some by their friends, some by their relatives. But the time will come, brethren, that when the boundary line will come, you cannot keep God's people in bondage forever. Look at the groundwork, the historical event in the past. The entire Jewish nation, they are trying to keep God's people in bondage, not to listen to Jesus Christ, not to accept the message of Jesus Christ, but they had not been able to do it forever. And it says here in answerer number 4, page 23, that whoever continues to hold his people in bondage and in ignorance of his truth, will he tread in his anger and trample them in his fury and sprinkle their blood upon his garments, thereby staining all his raiment and thus setting his people free. And here in 2SR 101, in reality, the message is directed to the watchmen on the walls of Zion. What is Zion? Headquarters. Let us read White House Recruiter, page 53. It says, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion at headquarters. And who are they that will be left in Zion? Only those who accept the message. Only those who lift up the message. It says here in 2SR 101, fearful is the day that is soon to fall upon the watchmen on the walls of Zion, for the righteous only shall be preserved. 2SR page 101. Now Let's go back again to our message. To repeat again, in 2TG number 14, page 15, it says, chapters 10 and chapter 11 are sandwiched between Revelation 8 and Revelation 9. So the word sandwich, it must be between Revelation 8:13 and Revelation 9 verse 1. Why is it that before chapter 10 verse 1 and 2 is fulfilled, there must be an announcement first. There must be a pronouncement first. Revelation 8 verse 13. Revelation 8 verse 13 is a warning message that any who will hinder the message brought by this mighty angel in Revelation 10 verse 1 and 2, woe unto them. Now, let us read 2TG, number 15, page 3. That which is to be during the sixth trumpet, while probation still lasts. You see, brothers and sisters, the description, it says, during the sixth trumpet. Revelation chapter 10, verse 1 is during the sixth trumpet, while provisionary time still lingers. If chapter 9, verse 1 is fifth trumpet, and chapter 10, verse 1 is fulfilled during the sixth trumpet, then how could it be that the prophetic event that will be fulfilled in the sixth trumpet is sandwiched before the fifth trumpet? Therefore, brothers and sisters, the only way that you could understand this prophecy is to follow the complete admonition given in tract number 8, page 5. That in order for us to correctly understand these very important events, more particularly to the trumpet study, let us carefully differentiate those things that takes place in heaven and those things that takes place on earth. So, that is very important. Now, let us read 2TG number 15, page 3. The subject of our study is found in Revelation chapters 10 and 11. We shall begin with Revelation 10, verse 1. Then I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Then it says, this angel has all the characteristics of a power that sends down the latter rain, and that causes the spiritual grain fully to develop. For that is what clouds, sunshine, and rainbow indicate. As a rainbow never appears without rain, the angel is therefore the angel that brings the rain in the sunshine for the development of the final harvest. For sure, this angel represents the messenger. And for certain, this messenger cannot be William Miller, because there is no such indication recorded in the written records that William Miller, God entrusted to him the latter end message to develop the saints to mature for the harvest. And the shepherd's rod called it for the development of the final harvest. In Revelation chapter 10, verses 1 to 11, the primary application is applied to the Millerites movement as portrayed in the vision. The angel who ate the little book, which is the book of Daniel, sweet as honey in his mouth, but became bitter in his belly, pointing to the great disappointment. But not all pertaining to Revelation 10 was fulfilled in the days of William Miller. And more particularly, Revelation 10 verse 1 and 2 and verse 6 and 7. So, or from verse 5 to 7. Those verses cannot be applied in the days of William Miller. And these are the prominent verses, prophetic events, by which it is sandwiched between Revelation 8:13 and Revelation chapter 9 on verse 1. Now, let us read tract number 5. It says here on page 100, tract number 5, page 100, events to take place just before the seventh trumpet sounds. I would like to read again. It says, events to take place just before the seventh trumpet sounds. So, we need now to ascertain clearly when does the seventh trumpet begins to sound. And the events mentioned here is Revelation chapter 10. Now, let us read a 12 symbolic code, number 2, page 3. It says, when and how the work is to be finished, signposts along the way. 12 symbolic code, number 2, page 3. The quotation is Revelation 10, verse 5 to 7. Revelation chapter 10, verses 5 to 7. Now, it says, I would like to read the commentary. The angel swore that there should be time no longer. I think I understand how we as Seventh-day Adventists interpret time no longer. But these two verses, when read together, clearly show what kind of time is to be no longer. For it is during the time of the sixth trumpet that the angel said, there shall be time no longer, but that at the commencement of the sounding of the seventh trumpet, the mystery of God shall be finished. What is the mystery of God? It is the work of the salvation or the gospel work. Then during the period of the seventh trumpet, there will be no mystery yet to be finished. For it is to be finished during the sixth trumpet. The angel, therefore, is to be understood as stating simply that provisionary time will extend only through the sounding of the sixth trumpet. And that is all, because the mystery of God is to be all finished at the time of the seventh angel begins to sound. From symbolic code number 2, page 3 and page 4. Now, I would like to elaborate the statement that saying that the angel, who is the angel in Revelation 10, verse 5 to verse 7, it is not the angel of the seventh trumpet, because this angel sounded before the seventh angel sound or blow his trumpet. Now let us read Revelation 10 verse 5, 6, and 7. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth. So it must be the angel in Revelation 10 verse 1 and 2, by which that angel God entrusted unto him the lateran message for the final development to mature the saints for the harvest. And it says, and the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven and swear by him. Of course, the pronoun him is pointing to Jesus Christ. And swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer. So, what is his message? To inform all humanity, but it is directed to the symbolical earth and the symbolical sea, that there is time no longer. Now, I would like to connect consecrated way to the Christian perfection. So, let us read. Page, so this is the statement. Consecrated way to Christian perfection. On page 105 and 106. Consecrated way to Christian perfection, page 105 and 106. And this, as we have already quoted, is itself according as yet declared to his servants the prophets. It is not alone the prophet of Patmos who declared that in this time, even now in our day, the mystery of God should be finished. For when the angel of God made this proclamation in the vision of the prophet of Patmos, he had already and long before declared the same thing to his servants the prophets. And this proclamation on Patmos was only the declaration of the angel that which God had long before declared to his servants the prophets should now surely be accomplished, and that with no more delay. The fourth proclamation of the angel is this: And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth, it says, lifted up his hand to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer, meaning delay, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as yet declared to his servants the promise. Revelation 10, verse 5, 6, and 7. What does it mean by that phrase? There is time no longer, meaning no more delay. If we will connect the reading in 12 symbolic code number 2, page 4, saying, the angel, therefore, is to be illustrated as stating simply that probationary time will extend only through the sounding of the sixth trumpet, and that is all. So the voice of inspiration plainly indicating that in the sounding of the message in the period of the sixth trumpet, there was an extension. So the statement, there is time no longer, can be easily understood is the declaration of the messenger through and by the name of Jesus Christ, saying, there is no more time of extension. There is no more delay. Now, our reading on Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection on page 105 and 106, it says that, as the Bible declared in Revelation 10, verse 5 to 7, such message was already given by God to his servant in the Old Testament. It is not John the Beloved alone in the island of Patmos, but rather the message in Revelation 10, verse 5, 6, and 7 is only a declaration to the fulfillment of that message that was already declared by God to his servants in the Old Testament. And who are they? The shepherd's rod made it so plain that prominently points out to Ezekiel and Isaiah. Now, let us connect our subject to 2SR page 222, saying, in our study of the seven seals, we reserve for future explanation the following scripture. Then I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Revelation 6, verse 6. Again, we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. See chapter 5, verse 11. Therefore, the price of the cereals is fixed by the great judge. There must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah himself is speaking. It's a wonderful prophecy, brothers and sisters, this statement in 2SR 222. First of all, the shepherd's rod gave stress that whatever that message cometh from the throne, there must be something of great importance, because it is God the Father, great Jehovah himself, is speaking. And the shepherd's rod quoted Revelation 5, verse 11. Now, I would like to remind first concerning Revelation chapter 5. And this subject concerning the last 3 trumpets, I will try my best that I could be able to explain in detail all the necessary information, beginning from Revelation 8 verse 13 up to the last verse on Revelation chapter 11 verse 19. Now, let us familiarize first Revelation chapter 5. Now, in 2SR page 193, it says, I would like to read a statement. Thus, we are confronted with the necessity of deeper study on the subject. Reading 2SR 193. Thus, we are confronted with the necessity of deeper study on the subject. According to the counsel of the servant of the Lord, we are admonished to study this, for it holds out an important truth for those who shall have a part in the closing of the gospel work. Quoting Testimonies for the Church, Volume 9, page 267. The 5th chapter of Revelation needs to be closely studied. It is of great importance to those who shall act a part in the work of God for these last days. Had the chapter been properly understood, explained, and published before the above testimony was written, there would have been no need for this urgency. Furthermore, if it had been explained in the past, why is the lesson of such great importance? And who is bearing the responsibility of its deliverance to the world? But the 5th chapter, separated from the 4th and 6th, cannot be comprehended. For these chapters contain one subject, namely the 7 seals. The 5th chapter is mentioned because it is the heart and key of the subject. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. The voice of inspiration is plainly telling you and I that the 5th chapter in Revelation chapter 5, containing 14 verses, it is the heart, and not only the heart, but it is the key of the subject concerning the 7 seals. Obviously, therefore, there is no possibility that you can open the 1st seal, 2nd seal, 3rd seal, 4th seal, 5th seal, 6th seal, 7th seal without the key. And the only key, accordingly, is Revelation chapter 5. Remember the Jefferson says in trunk number 12 on page 63, to open without a key, a locked door is, of course, to break the door. But being unbreakable, the locked door of prophecy is impossible to open without the key. So that is very plain. More particularly to the subject of the 7 seals, no one can open it except the Lion of the tribe of Judah, or the Lamb, which is Jesus Christ, or Michael, according to Daniel 10, verse 21. So it can be easily understood that unless we could completely understand Revelation chapter 5 from verse 1 to verse 14, there is no possibility that we could understand the subject of the 7 seals. And certainly, the only one who can open our understanding concerning Revelation chapter 5 is the Spirit of Jesus Christ. And without that Spirit, there is no possibility that Revelation chapter 5, verse 1 to 14 can be understood. Now, I would like to read first to SR 146 as the answer of the question, who are they that will bear the responsibility of delivering the last gospel proclamation throughout the whole world? Into SR 193. The answer is found into SR 146. I would like to read. Therefore, to SR 146, therefore, those who shall shine are as stars are the 144,000. I would like to read again to SR 146. Therefore, those who shall shine as stars are the 144,000. And all who shall have a part in the closing work of the gospel. Think of the glorious promise. Is there anything like it in all the world? What can you compare with celestial bliss in the presence of God? Life everlasting without pain or tears. So the absolute answer in SR 193, it is the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel. Therefore, they will be the only ones by which God will commit unto them the complete understanding concerning Revelation chapter 5. Now, I would like to read first Revelation chapter 5, verse 9. Let me read to you. Revelation chapter 5, verse 9. And they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by the blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and hast made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. Revelation chapter 5, verse 9 and verse 10. Now, I would like to read this reading, and let me see. And I think in 1SR, a packet edition, page 29, it says, For some tempting mess of pottage, they let slip this sovereign privilege. Sadly, they are even now letting it slip away to the Jacob class, the faithful laity, the 144,000 future servants of God. Revelation 7 verse 3, Revelation 5 verse 10, Testimonies volume 5 pages 475 and 476. Now the absolute answer given in this paragraph, 1SR Packet Edition page 29, Revelation chapter 5 verse 10 is pointing to the 144,000 living saints, his spiritual Israel. That is very plain here in 1SR Packet Edition, page 29. Now, here in track number 8, page 5, let us read again the statement. It says, The Lamb standing at first before the throne in heaven stands later with the 144,000 on Mount Zion upon earth, though the elders in the beast round about the throne remain in heaven. So correctly to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. The 7 lamps, verse 5, being part of the sanctuary fixtures, gives conclusive evidence that the heavenly throne scene occurs in the sanctuary, whereas the subsequent Zion scene takes place upon Mount Zion, the king's earthly palace grounds, not upon Mount Moriah, the sanctuary grounds, where it would necessarily have to take place, were it to denote that the event occurs in the sanctuary. These scenes, therefore, are of 2 different events in 2 different locations, the sitting of the throne in heaven and the standing of the redeemed with the Lamb on earth, while the activities embraced in the throne scene are still in progress. Track number 8, pages 5 and 6. So here the Shepherd's Rod says that Revelation 14 verse 1, that is palace grounds, Mount Zion. But Revelation chapter 4 and 5, that is sanctuary grounds. The occurrence takes place within the sanctuary itself. Therefore, let us distinctly separate Revelation 5 verse 9 and Revelation 14 verse 1 according to our reading. Now, let us now compare, brothers and sisters, here in Revelation 14 verse 1, 2, and 3. But I would like to read verse 3. It says, And they sang as it were a new song before the throne and before the 4 beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Revelation 14 verse 3. So let us distinctly separate this verse by which the heavenly being were singing the new song in the palace grounds in Mount Zion, while Revelation chapter 5 verse 9, the heavenly beings were singing a new song in the sanctuary grounds in Mount Moriah. Although both of them describe as new song. Now let us read to SR 172. It says, The song was sung in heaven. It says, so let us read this statement. The song was sung in heaven by heavenly beings before the throne and before the beast and the elders. Therefore, it is evident that the judgment was in progress. So that is very plain. When they were singing, the judgment was in progress. Further explanation to follow. Note that the 144,000 did not sing, but they only could learn the song as it was sung in heaven. That is, they alone understood the heavenly truth in that particular time and their position in connection with the message they must bear. So what is the significance of the song? Heavenly truth. Heavenly truth, by which that heavenly truth, nobody learned that heavenly truth except the 144,000. Now let me ask you, all shepherds are believers, honestly, is Beethoven is a part of the 144,000 living saints? He could not be because he died. And the truth of the matter is that the comparison is with the dead rather than with the living. It says here in one symbolic code, number 15, page 8. It will be noted that the shepherd's rod is stating this of the 144,000 in comparison with the dead and not with the great multitude. One symbolic code, number 15, page 8. Now, if you will say that the message of the living saints, they will only repeating the message that had been given by God to Beethoven, by which he died, then there is no comparison at all. While the Bible, the shepherd's rod, plainly told us in one symbolic code, number 15, page 8, that the comparison is with the dead, by which there is a wide contrast. There is a wide distinction to all of them who died because they did not learn that song. Why? Why is it that they did not learn that song? Because they died before the heavenly beings are singing. So the statement in 2SR 172, in that particular time, what particular time? The time when the heavenly beings are singing. And what is the indication when the heavenly beings are singing? Indicates that the judgment that pertains to the living are in progress, according to SR 172. And the absolute fact is that nobody could learn that song except to those saints that will be among the 144,000. And the admonition is that in 7 BC, 969, saying, strive with all your power that God has given us to be among the 144,000 living saints. I love so much this reading in 2SR 102. It says, 2SR 102, and no man could learn that song. It says, and you know that this statement is during the purification of God's church. Let's read the upper paragraph. It says, the purification of God's church marks the harvest or the loud cry of the third angel's message, for the Lord of the harvest declares, let both grow together until the harvest. The wheat gathered at the commencement of the harvest and at the separation from the tares in the church is called the first fruits of the harvest. As John looked upon the company, he heard a melody of joy, inexpressible by human lips. And they sang as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which we redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. Revelation 14, verse 3 and 4. And no man could learn that song. Experience only can tell the joy in one's heart at a time when rescued from everlasting ruin and granted everlasting life without tasting death, merged into eternity's ceaseless ages, a life that measures with the life of God. To us our page 102. And you see, the occurrence is attached to the subject, the purification of the church. And to remind again, answerer number 4, page 22 and 23, it says that Isaiah 63, only part on verse 3 that had been fulfilled on the first advent of Jesus Christ, but the rest of the chapter will be fulfilled in the time of the purification of the church, from verse 1 to the last verse. And then there is a divine warning that whoever continue to hold God's people in bondage, brothers and sisters, because God's people they need to hear this song. They need to hear this song, this new song, while the heavenly beings are singing. And this song is the heavenly truth. This song is the present truth. Therefore, let us distinctly separate the heavenly truth while the heavenly beings are singing in the sanctuary grounds. Revelation chapter 5, verse 9. Because that song is the key to unlock the mystery of God. Revelation 14 verse 1, that is already the song of victory, brothers and sisters. The song of victory in Revelation chapter 14. Palace grounds. So let us focus first our attention to the heavenly song, while the heavenly beings singing while they were still in the sanctuary grounds. Now I would like to read 2TG number 12 on page 24. 2TG number 12, page 24. It says, chapters 4 and 5, we see, contain a scene of a special event which caused the book to be unsealed. That which came out of the book is, in the fullest sense, the revelation of Jesus Christ, of the one who only was worthy to open the book. Thus it is that the revelation of Jesus Christ begins with the 6th chapter and ends with the last chapter of the book, the chapters in which are recorded the things which the breaking of the 7 seals disclose. Yes, the revelation consists of the things which were sealed with 7 seals. But let us focus our attention to the statement that it is the special event which caused the book to be unsealed. So let us distinctly separate the special event on chapter 4 and the special event on chapter 5. What is the special event? Now let us read track number 5. On track number 5, page 102, it says, by that time, it was understood that the statement, the sanctuary shall be cleansed, did not mean that Christ was to cleanse the earth in 1844, but rather that in fulfillment of Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10, he was to cleanse the heavenly sanctuary. This is the very event which opened the seals and sounded the trumpets, and which, as we have seen, John was told would be hereafter. Now let us focus first to the word hereafter. Here in 2SR on page 191, it says, the door he saw opened is the veil between the holy and the most holy, for there is no other that had been kept close. Therefore, the word hereafter in chapter 4 verse 1 means from the time of the vision, pointing forward to 1844. Now, here's another statement in track number 15. I would like, on track number 15, it says, track number 15, page 9. The first and most important thing that takes place in this solemn assembly is the opening of the book. Now, I would like to read again the statement. Track number 15, page 9. The first and most important thing that takes place in this solemn assembly is the opening of the book. So, what is the first and the most important thing that takes place in this solemn assembly? It is the opening of the book. Now, we already read, brothers and sisters, what is the special event that caused the book to be opened? Because that is the statement in 2TG number 12, pages 24. Page 24. The absolute answer is found in track number 5, 102. It is the cleansing of the sanctuary. Therefore, the special event on chapter 4 is the commencement of the cleansing of the sanctuary, but the special event on chapter 5 is the end part of such cleansing. Or in other words, the special event on chapter 4 is the very first day of atonement And the special event on chapter 5 is the last and the final day of atonement. Cleansing of the sanctuary. The commencement and the end part of such cleansing, by which the focal point is the end part rather than to the commencement. Now let us read again the statement. It says, He was to cleanse the heavenly sanctuary. This is the very event. So this is the very event which opened the seals and sounded the trumpets. Now let us now distinctly separate the sounding of the seven seals on the special event on chapter 4 and the sounding of the seven seals or the breaking of the seven seals. Let us distinctly separate the breaking of the seven seals and the sounding of the trumpets on the special event on chapter 4 and the breaking of the seven seals and the sounding of the trumpets on the special event on chapter 5. Now, I would like to read 2SR on page 215. So let us read 215. The altar is in the holy place, just opposite the throne that is in the most holy. The two apartments were separated by a veil. In the Day of Atonement, the veil or door of the early tabernacle was opened and the high priest went in. But let it be remembered that the door veil was left open while the high priest officiated. Thus the two apartments became one. For this reason, the congregation were not permitted in the holy place on that day, as they were at other times. For the veil being lifted, the holy place also became most holy. So while the door to the most holy was open, the entrance to the holy was closed. Therefore, the high priest alone used both apartments on the day of atonement. See Leviticus 16 verse 17. Who is our high priest? Jesus Christ. So from October 22, 1844, I would like to show the illustration. We know that that is the proceedings of the first four seals, by which the matching trumpets must be the first four trumpets. We have the first four seals and we have the first four trumpets. What is the first four trumpets? The entire period of the Old Testament. And the last three trumpets, the entire period of the New Testament. Let us read again that statement. In 2TG, number 14, page 15. The trumpets themselves are shown to be in two divisions. So the trumpets is divided only in two divisions. 4 in the Old Testament time and 3 in the New. That is, the last three are wood trumpets. The first of the wood trumpets introduces the descending of the heavenly star, to whom the key of the bottomless pit was given. Obviously, the star is symbolical of the angel who at the commencement of the millennium shuts Satan into the bottomless pit. For he, the angel of Revelation 20 verse 1, is the angel who has the key of the bottomless pit. He could not possibly have the key if it had been given to some other. Now, here the voice of inspiration says that the seven trumpets are divided only into two divisions. The first four trumpets in the Old Testament time and the last three trumpets in the New Testament time. So, the matching seals must be the first four seals. The first four seals, and also we have the first four trumpets. So it's very important to understand the Old Testament time and the New Testament time. But the fulfillment of the promise in the Old Testament and the fulfillment of the promise in the New Testament. Let us distinctly separate the fulfillment. For example, I would like to read to you here in track number 5. Let us read this. Track number 8 rather. Track number 8, this is the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. Track number 8 on pages 76, 77, 78, and 79. Although this is not my subject, but just to relate. Here on page 79, it says, the first covenant, or also called Old Covenant, or also called Old Testament. So, the first covenant, the Old Covenant, the Old Testament is pointing to the same thing. So, the second covenant, that is the New Testament or the New Covenant. It says, this first covenant reaches from the time it was ordained to the imminent and final ingathering of the 12 tribes as a kingdom. Now, I would like to read again. The first covenant reaches from the time it was ordained to the imminent and final ingathering of the 12 tribes as a kingdom. You see, the first covenant reaches to the time of the ingathering of the 144,000 spiritual Israel. And that is pointing, brothers and sisters, to the 5 symbolical months from crucifixion to the ingathering of the 144,000. Remember in track number 5 on page 74. Let us read again. Track number 5, page 74, it says, in track number 3, the harvest, the time from the baptism of Christ to the close of provision is shown to be illustrated by 12 figurative months, 6 from Christ's baptism to his crucifixion, 5 from the crucifixion to the ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000 living saints in Revelation 14 verse 4. So this statement, this first covenant reaches from the time, of course the covenant must be carried out only to the faithful and to the righteous. So let us distinctly separate the righteous on the first covenant and the righteous in the new covenant. The verse in the Bible in Psalms Psalms chapter 50 on verse 5. Gather my saints, Psalms 50 verse 5. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. In the Old Testament, although they were sacrificing the blood of the lamb, but all the righteous, they fully believe that that is only an illustration. They fully believe that that is pointing to the life of the Son of the living God. They fully believe that that is representing Jesus Christ. So, all the saints will be gathered by Jesus Christ. The saints in the Old Covenant and the saints in the New Covenant. So, it says here in Psalms 50 verse 5, gather my saints together unto me, those that had made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And that is the one of the purpose why Jesus Christ died on the cross. Here in John chapter 11 from verse 52, verse 51 and 52, and this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. John 11 verse 50, 51, and 52. So pointing to the gathering of the saints. So this statement in track number 8, page 79, is even more pointing to the covenant that God hath made to all the saints that obeyed His commandments, that through His blood, all their iniquity, all their sins will be blotted out. And that is why the statement here, track number 8, page 79, this first covenant reaches from the time it was ordained to the imminent and final ingathering of the 12 tribes as a kingdom. Or in other words, if you wish to know when would be the commencement of the ingathering of the 12 tribes, more particularly to the spiritual Israel, it must be to the time when all the saints in the Old Testament, their sins, or the entire proceedings rather, the entire proceedings of all the saints that died in the Old Covenant were completely finished, then that is the commencement of the ingathering of the 144,000 living saints, because that first covenant reaches to the time of the ingathering of the 12 tribes. according to the voice of inspiration. Therefore, all the occurrences that will take place on this earth can only be understood through and by the proceedings that occurred in the heavenly sanctuary. Now, I would like to read again track number 15. Let us read again. Track number 15. Pages 57 and page 58, right? So, let us read. It says here, page 57 and page 58. Thus it is that while the first four seals, to repeat again, the first four seals, the matching trumpet is the first four trumpet. What is the first four trumpet? The Old Testament. What is the Old Testament? The Old Covenant. So, the proceedings that pertains to the entire first four seals, pointing to the proceedings of the entire saints under the Old Testament time. But the last three seals, pointing to all the saints in the New Testament period. Now, let us read again, track number 15, page 57. Thus it is that while the first four seals carry us through the periods of the day in which the works of men are made manifest, the last three seals carry us through the day of God, the day in which His truth and His works are made manifest. Now, I would like to connect again that the truth, according to the shepherd's rod, let us read again, 2SR 100, let us read, 139. It says, the Bible is the revelation of creation and redemption in Christ, Creator and Redeemer. Therefore, the Sabbath and the sanctuary constitute the truth. See Hebrews chapter 9 verse 10 and Hebrews 4 verse 4 to 10. Thus, these two doctrines are coupled together, cannot be separated, and bear the whole truth. So, if you will be saying the truth, pointing to the whole truth, that is pointing to the daily and the sanctuary, or the Sabbath and the sanctuary truth. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, there are three Sabbaths. And among the three, only one, which is called the Sabbath of the Lord. The common Sabbath by which it is entirely different with the Lord's Sabbath is the papal Sabbath, because took place on the first day of the week, that is Sunday. But according to the 1888 message, there is a counterfeit Sabbath by which fall on the same day, on seventh day, on Saturday, and that is the Jewish Sabbath. And that Jewish Sabbath, that is pointing to all of them that follow the footsteps of the Jewish people, that they strictly observe the Sabbath while rejecting the truth concerning Jesus Christ, the truth concerning the ministry and the priesthood of Jesus Christ. So the only true Sabbath is the Sabbath that is God entrusted to them, on that group of people, on that Sabbath keepers, Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary. Now, in this reading, in track number 15, page 57 and 58, during the first four seals, according to the reading, the works of men are made manifest. What is the works of men? Now, in words to the little flock, let me see if I can find the words to the little flock. Let us read that. The words to the little flock is not found in page 5. It says, the true time, or the burden of this prophecy is time prophecy. So I would like to read that reading. The entire paragraph. The burden of this prophecy is time, concerning which there has been true and false visions. The true vision or light concerning time was written on the chart or table. Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 2. God approved of the proclamation of 1843 and the 10th day of the 7th month, 1844, by the pouring out of the Holy Ghost. Since the 7th month, 1844, the rebellious house of Israel had been removing the landmarks and writing and proclaiming false visions But we all know that it has been the work of man and not of God. So what is the work of man? To destroy the landmark, to destroy the pillar of Adventism, the central pillar of the Advent faith, the 2,300 days and nights. And although it was allowed by God, and that's why in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, let me see that statement. Testimonies for the Church. And to all reformers, I know that they were so familiar with D.M. Canright and also Desmond Ford, who tried to overthrow the prophecy or that foundation stone of the Adventism, the 2,300 days and nights. And since it was already predicted beforehand that the sanctuary will be trodden underfoot, according to Daniel 8 verse 11 to 12, and that what happened among the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And for sure, at this time, they were in total darkness concerning the sanctuary doctrine. So that is the time by which Testimonies for the Church. So, but the voice of inspiration says that in the last 3 seals, that is the appointed time by which the truth pertaining to the daily and the sanctuary and the works of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary, His mediatorial work, are made manifest. It did not say, were made manifest. Or in other words, it was inscribed, brothers and sisters, in present occurrence, or while the judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary are still in progress. So, going back again to Revelation 10 verses 1 and 2, to repeat again, brothers and sisters, in that verses, Revelation 10 verse 1 and 2, and Revelation 5 to 7, before that message had been entrusted by God to that messenger, there is first a divine warning in Revelation 8 verse 13, as stated in 2 TG 14:15, by which the message of warning is directed to the symbolical earth. Who? Unto whom? Those who will hinder the message brought by that messenger. And what is the message? The message is that there is time no longer. And what is the burden of that prophecy? Time prophecy. That although there was a period of time that God allowed that there is extension according to 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 3 and 4, but the time came that God declared that there will be no more extension. There will be no more delay. When would that be? That is the time when God the Father is speaking. Now, the special event in Revelation chapter 4 is the time when the Son of the living God is speaking. And it is even more pertaining to the time illustrated by the parable in Luke 13, that the Son of the living God is the one who pleaded to God the Father to have extension. But there was a time when God the Father Himself is speaking, that when the time when God the Father Himself is speaking indicates that no more extension. And that's why it is illustrated here in 2 TG number 46, page 22. It says, I shall read from Christ Object Lesson pages 217 and 218, beginning with paragraph 1. The barren tree receives the rain and the sunshine and the gardener's care. It draws nourishment from the soil, but it is unproductive boughs, only darken the ground, so that fruit-bearing plants cannot flourish in its shadow. With what unwearied love did Christ minister to Israel during the period of added provision? So His care and labor for you are not lessened, but increased. Still He says, I the Lord do keep it. I will water it every moment, lest any hurt it. I will keep it night and day. If it bear fruit, well, and if not, then after that, the heart that does not respond to divine agencies becomes hardened until it is no longer susceptible to the influence of the Holy Spirit. then it is that the word is spoken, cut it down. Why convert it the ground? This parable explains that Christianity is plant-like. It is like a fruit tree. It is like a fruit tree. Moreover, it explains that God is very patient with us in our Christianity. For in the parable, only after the third fruitless year would the Lord consider cutting down the barren fig tree, and even then, He was convinced to wait still another year. Thus we see we are given plenty of time in which to make good, plenty of time to begin bearing fruit. There is nevertheless, as in the parable, no fruitless tree to be spared beyond the fourth parabolic year. 2 TJ 46:22 is closely connected to Matthew 20 because 3 years also pointing to the 3 hours interval and 1 year pointing to the remaining 1 hour. So during the period of delay, it is Jesus Christ pleaded with God the Father to have extension because of His love. But there is a boundary line. And it was indicated in the scriptures that when God the Father Himself is speaking, indicates that no more delay, no more extension. And before God the Father began to speak, there must be first message of warning. Woe to them, brothers and sisters, who will speak evil. Who to them who will say that the prophecy will not be fulfilled. And that was illustrated in Ezekiel chapter 12. So this is the last reading. I would like to read in track number 2. On page 19, it says, "Do not, my brethren, say, the vision that he seeth is for many days to come, and he prophesied of the things that are far off, for the days are at hand, and the effect of every vision." Ezekiel 12, verse 27 and 23. Remember, we already read words to the left of flesh, page 5. It says that it is God the Father Himself is speaking. You still remember consecrated way to Christian perfection? The declaration in the island of Patmos. No, it is not the first time, but it was already declared by God to His servants, the prophets in the Old Testament. And as I've said, the prominent one is Ezekiel and Isaiah, according to the writings of Sister White and B.T. Hobart, by which in Ezekiel chapter 12, it says, "It shall no longer be prolonged," meaning there was a period of time that God allowed to be prolonged, to be extended. There was delay, but the time came that there will be no more delays. We will continue this subject, brothers and sisters, and hoping the good Lord will bless us and would help us. This very important subject, the last 3 wood trumpets, and we will study this subject carefully and, if possible, in a more detailed manner, that all the necessary information, brothers and sisters, must be dealt with in this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.